Hi booktube, Aaron here, hope you're doing okay. I had hoped before Christmas to get a few videos up, but unfortunately due to a spot of illness and a bit of trouble with the internet, I wasn't able to. However, I'm feeling a bit better now and the internet's back up and running. So I'm here today to talk about my reading goals for 2023. So I've got a stack of books here to go through, and then I'll talk about some reading events and also a challenge that I've set myself. But if I do start sort of speaking, not too coherently, then we know that I'm back to normal. Anyway, let's get back into the books. So I've sort of split them into three sections. To be honest, you could probably model them up and it wouldn't make too much of a difference. However, so the first one we've got here though is translated fiction. And if you've been checking in from time to time, this book won't be too much of a surprise, and it's Remembrance of Things Past by Marcel Proust. So I'm currently 2 volumes of my way into this, and so it'll be probably taking up a large chunk of next year, but I'm looking forward to spending more time with Proust next year. And to kind of go with that, whether I read it as I'm reading Remembrance of Things Past or whether I read it just after I finish it, I'm not sure. But I've got here Monsieur Proust by Celeste Alburet. Alburet was Proust's housekeeper, and so she's giving a kind of inside look into his life, and it's got loads of great photos and things, and even sort of a little peek at his manuscripts there as well. So you can kind of see how that's, I think, quite early on, and that's a bit later on the other side. I'm not sure if you can make it out, but yeah, it's certainly not neat. Then next up, we've got Alone in Berlin by Hans Fallada. And I don't know too much about this. I hadn't really heard about it. When I picked it up, it just sort of stood out to me and sounded interesting, about, I suppose, some fairly quiet but still kind of brave resistance in Berlin in 1940. And so yeah, we'll just see how it goes. And I really love the cover photograph as well. Don't want to cover it up too much with my fingers, but yeah, I really like that cover. Then next up, we've got a couple of sort of Scandinavian Nordic picks. The first is from Norway, and it's The Looking Glass Sisters by Goril Gabrielsen, about 2 sisters who live together and are kind of dependent on each other, and then an outsider kind of comes into their company. And so I'm just interested in finding out who that stranger is, why they intrude, what difference they make, and all of that. And then the next from Denmark is Miss Miller's Feeling for Snow by Peter Hoig. This is actually the American edition, and so I think over in America it's called Miller's Sense of Snow, but I kind of liked the sound of the of how it was rendered for the British edition, so I've desecrated the cover. But both of these I'd quite like to read relatively soon, while it's still quite cold and the nights are quite long, just to kind of get into the right kind of mood, you know. And then the last in this section then is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I read War and Peace for the first time this year, and it was one of my favourite reads this year. And I'm just really itching to get to Anna Karenina. However, it's probably going to be a little while, and I'll get to that in a bit. The next section is chunky classics, which we've already seen some chunky classics, so they're not, it's not too much of a, I suppose, an individual category. The first is an actual classic, and it's The Metamorphosis by Ovid, and it just keeps coming up, and it's referenced all the time, but I've never read it. I've read Ted Hughes's Tales from Ovid, which is kind of his rendering of some of the stories from here, but I've never gone back to Ovid himself and seen what it's like, so I'm looking forward to doing that at some point. And then a couple of chunky books that were originally written in English. We've got Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, which I've heard is amazing, and I've heard someone read out just the first few pages, and it sounds really, really good. So yeah, it's one I'd really like to get to this year. And then the next is a little poetry project for me, and it's to go through William Blake's complete poems. And so I don't really know when I'll do this or how much time it'll take, but I've got about 800 pages of poetry to go through there. And then the last section, probably the most loose category, is cool authors I'd like to check in with, and really, all the books I've discussed really kind of go into that category. However, first up, we've got John le Carré. So I've read a little bit of John le Carré before, but it's been more of his sort of later stuff. So I've got here The Looking Glass War, which is a bit earlier on. So I'm kind of interested in seeing what he was like a little earlier on, and seeing how his style changed as times changed. So I'm looking forward to reading some more le Carré. Then we've got Georges Simenon, Death Threats and Other Stories. I've heard great things about Simenon both on and off of BookTube, and so we'll see what these are like. One of my favourite poets, it's Ted Hughes, and this is Gaudette, which is I suppose a sort of a collection that kind of tells the story of a vicar who's pulled into like a spirit world, and then his kind of doppelganger comes out into our world and causes all kind of mayhem. So it sounds very odd, very, very Ted Hughes. So we'll see how that goes. And then the last two here, we've got Sir Thomas Browne, The Major Works. He just keeps popping up all over the place, and people just keep mentioning him. And so I'd quite like to see what he's like. I think I heard Jason from the channel of A Disappointed Man say recently that his prose style is just really, really satisfying. But I mean, W.G. Sebald, Borges, Robert Macfarlane, and like loads of sort of really great people just keep bringing him up. So looking forward to seeing what he's like. And then the last one I've got here then is Lydia Davis. So I've got her collected stories, and I've sort of dipped in to get a taste, but I'd just like to spend some more time and just seeing what her writing's like. And so there we go. There's a sort of sampling of a few books, or a good pile of books that I'd like to read in 2023. In terms of the challenge that I've set myself, so I'm going to call it the Alphabet Challenge, and essentially I'm just going to read a book by an author with a surname for every letter of the alphabet. No, a letter of the alphabet for every surname. You get what I mean. And so I'm going to be checking off every letter as it gets its author, I suppose, and I'll let you know how I do. I probably could have explained that a little bit better, but I'm I'm sure you know what I mean. And then in terms of reading events, so the usual suspects really. So I'll be participating in March of the Mammoths. Actually, I've got my mammoth picked out already. It's going to be the Strudloff Steps by Heimito von Doderer. I seem to have a growing obsession with Vienna, particularly in the sort of first, say, 30 years of the 20th century. So I'm just looking forward to seeing how von Doderer kind of treats that period. And then for Victober, I haven't really picked anything yet, but I will be participating in Victober. And I haven't really made any plans about Jane Austen July or Shakespeare, but I'm sure by the time each of them rolls around that I'll find myself pulled into them. There's a newer reading event coming on the scene next year, so it's Classics and Company, which is hosted by Anna Novella and Micah Cummins. And they've got a great list of books that they're going to be reading next year, and a great list of guest hosts for each book. And so I'm going to be checking in and seeing what they're reading. There's definitely 2 books that I'm considering reading along with, and so that's what I'll be keeping my eye out for. And I also want to participate in Faulkner in August as well. I've somehow managed to miss it the last 2 years, and so this is the year where I finally join in. And then the last thing then is the BookTube prize, and so last year I judged it for the first time for just for the first round, and it was a lot of fun. I was reading translated fiction. This year they don't have the capacity to have that 3rd division, and so it's just fiction and non-fiction. So I'm going to be judging I'll be judging fiction. I was about to tell you a lie. I'll be judging fiction. But I think that's more or less it, I think. So I'll be back soon with a sort of wrap up for 2022, going over some reading stats and sharing some of my favourite books. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon.